The council chamber was filled with noise. Representatives from 100 different species argued and shouted at each other. The Varani delegate stood in the center, his soft body trembling. He was asking for help, begging really, but nobody was listening. Captain Doyun watched from the human observation deck. His jaw was tight. His hands gripped the railing so hard his knuckles turned white. Next to him, Ambassador Heijin stood perfectly still, her face showing nothing. But Doyun knew her well enough. She was angry too. The Varani delegate spoke again. His voice was quiet and polite. Even now. Please. The Kralith have destroyed 12 of our colonies. 3 million of our people are dead. We have no weapons, no defenses. We are scholars and traders. We ask only for protection until we can evacuate our remaining worlds. A massive reptilian counselor from the Kralith Empire stood up. His scales gleamed under the lights. The Varani colonies were built in our territory. We claimed those systems 200 years ago. They are thieves and squatters. We are simply taking back what is ours. The Varani delegate's eye stalks drooped. Those worlds were empty when we arrived. We meant no offense. We will leave. Just give us time. Please. The Kralith counselor laughed. It was a harsh, cruel sound. The chamber erupted again. Some species protested weakly. Most stayed silent. The council chairman, a floating jellyfish-like being, raised his tentacles. The council cannot interfere in territorial disputes, especially when one party has clear military superiority. The matter is closed. Doyun moved before he could stop himself. He stepped forward to the railing. No, the matter is not closed. The chamber went quiet. Hundreds of alien eyes turned to look at him. The chairman's voice carried a note of irritation. Captain Doyun, the human delegation does not have speaking privileges in this session. Please return to your seat. Quote, I am returning to my seat, Doyun said. But first, I want everyone here to remember something. The year was 2247. Earth was dying. A plague was killing millions every day. Every species in this council refused to help us. You said humans were too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable. You sealed our borders and left us to die. Ambassador Heijin touched his arm, but she didn't pull him back. She wanted to hear this too. Doyun continued. One person defied you. A Varani merchant named Ethelos. He smuggled medicine through your blockades. He risked everything to help a species he'd never met, because it was the right thing to do. His government disowned him. Your council sanctioned the Varani people for breaking the quarantine, but Ethelos saved 17 million human lives before the plague burned out. The Varani delegate's eye stalks lifted. You remember this? Humans remember everything, Doyun said quietly. Especially kindness. Especially debts. He turned to face the Kralith counselor directly. You have 1 month to stop your attacks on the Varani. Withdraw from their space. Leave them in peace. The Kralith counselor's laugh was even louder this time. Or what, human? Your species has 12 worlds. 12. We have 200. Your fleet numbers in the hundreds. Ours numbers in the thousands. You have no allies, no power, no leverage. Go home before you embarrass yourselves further. The other counselors murmured agreement. The human delegation was small, young, weak. Everyone knew this. Earth had only joined the galactic community 200 years ago. They were nothing. Doyun smiled. It was not a friendly smile. You're right. We have no leverage, no power, nothing but a debt to repay. He looked around the chamber one more time. The Varani showed humanity mercy when we were helpless. Now we will show them what happens when you threaten someone a human calls friend. Captain Doyun. The chairman's voice was sharp. You are dangerously close to threatening a council member species. This is a violation of... I'm not threatening anyone, Doyun interrupted. I'm making a promise. To the Varani. We will repay what we owe. He turned and walked out. Ambassador Heejin followed him. The chamber exploded into noise behind them. Angry voices. Mocking laughter. Threats. In the corridor outside, Heijin finally spoke. That was either very brave or very stupid. Probably both, Do-yoon admitted. His hands were shaking now. The anger was draining away, replaced by fear. What had he just done? He'd essentially declared war on behalf of his entire species without authorization. He could be court-martialed for this. Heijin pulled out her communication device. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she began typing. I'm sending a message to Fleet Command. The recall signal. Oh. Do-yoon stared at her. Ambassador, I spoke out of turn. You don't have to. Ithelos didn't have authorization either, Heejin said. He saved millions of us anyway. His government punished him for it. He died poor and alone in exile. She finished typing and looked up at Do-yoon. Her eyes were hard. Every human child learns his name in school. We built a monument to him on Earth. We named a city after him. And we swore that if his people ever needed us, we would come. No matter the cost. She pressed send. Far away, in dozens of hidden locations across human space, alarms began to sound. Ships that had waited in silence for decades powered up their engines. Soldiers who had trained in secret prepared for deployment. Engineers activated systems that the galaxy didn't know existed. The recall signal had been sent, and humanity was going to war. In the council chamber, the Kralith counselor was still laughing. The other species were already dismissing the human threat. They had seen the human fleet. Small. Insignificant. Nothing to fear. They were about to learn that humans are very good at keeping secrets. And even better, at keeping promises. The message reached Admiral Minseo while she was inspecting the shipyards. She stopped walking when her communicator buzzed. She read the single word on the screen. Recall. She'd been waiting for this message for 30 years. Part of her hoped it would never come. Another part, the part that remembered history lessons about Ithelos, was relieved. Sound the alarm, she told her assistant. Wake everything up. Around her, the asteroid field began to move. Rocks that had floated peacefully for decades split apart. Beneath the stone shells, metal gleamed. Shipyards larger than cities powered up. Construction bays that had been dark for years filled with light. And the ships, dozens of them, began to move. These weren't the small patrol vessels the galaxy had seen. These were warships, dreadnoughts, carriers, destroyers built with technology humanity had developed in secret, tested in hidden facilities, perfected over generations. Minseo watched them emerge and felt a familiar mix of pride and fear. Fear because their existence meant humanity had been lying to the galaxy for 200 years. And lies like that had consequences. In another system, Commander Taehyun's stealth carrier exited the radiation storm that had hidden it. The storm was so intense that no sensor could penetrate it. The perfect hiding spot. His crew had lived here for 5 years, rotating in and out, waiting. All teams, report status, Taehyun ordered. The responses came quickly. Weapons ready. Engines ready. Marines ready. Everyone had known this day might come. They'd trained for it, prepared for it. Now, it was here. Taehyun pulled up the files on Kralith military tactics. He'd studied them for years. Knew their formations, their strategies, their weaknesses. The Kralith were powerful, but they were predictable. They relied on superior numbers and heavy frontal attacks. They didn't do subtle. Humanity had spent 2 centuries learning to be very subtle. Set course for Kralith space, Taehyun said. Stealth protocols active. Let's go say hello. On Earth. Intelligence Director Jiwoo stood in a room full of screens. Each screen showed a different location across the galaxy. And on each screen, a human face stared back at her. These were her agents, Merchants, scientists, teachers. Ordinary people, living ordinary lives in extraordinary places. They'd been waiting too. Some of them had been in position for decades. They'd built businesses, made friends, became part of the communities they lived in. And all along, they'd been watching, listening, learning. Activate all assets, Jiwoo ordered. I need information on Kralith fleet positions, supply lines, communication networks, everything. You have 6 hours. The screens went dark as her agents got to work. Jiwoo allowed herself a small smile. The galaxy thought humans were newcomers. Naive. Simple. They had no idea how deep humanity had dug its roots. Dr. Sun-hee was in her laboratory when the recall came. She'd been working with Varani colleagues on a research project, studying ancient texts. Boring work, really, but important. The Varani were good people, patient, kind. They'd taught her so much over the years. Now they were dying. Sun-hee read the recall message and felt tears in her eyes. Finally, someone was going to help them. She sent a coded message to her Varani friends. Help is coming. Hold on. All across human space, the same scene repeated. Military bases hidden inside mining colonies activated. Research stations that were actually weapons platforms powered up their systems. Trade ships that carried hidden weapons bays opened their cargo holds. The human fleet began to gather, and it was massive. The Galactic Council's intelligence estimated humanity had maybe 300 warships. They were wrong. By a factor of 10. 3,000 ships emerged from hiding. Some had been built in secret. Others had been disguised. All of them were equipped with technology the galaxy had never seen. Gravitational weapons that could fold space. Energy shields that could adapt to any attack. Propulsion systems that made human ships faster and more maneuverable than anything else in the galaxy. Humanity had taken 200 years of galactic knowledge and improved on all of it. They'd also learned from history. Every war, every battle, every mistake ever made. Human military academies didn't just teach tactics. They taught psychology, economics, culture, how to win without fighting, how to fight without killing, how to make victory inevitable before the first shot was fired. Back on the council station, ambassadors were receiving reports. The numbers didn't make sense. Where had all these ships come from? Where had they been hiding? How had humanity built all this without anyone noticing? The answer was simple. Humanity had gone to all the places nobody else wanted. The toxic nebulas, the radiation storms, the unstable systems, places that were dangerous or worthless or both. And in those places, hidden from prying eyes, they'd built an empire. Not an empire of conquest, an empire of preparation. Admiral Minseo stood on the bridge of her flagship. Around her, the fleet was assembling. 3,000 ships, 50,000 crew members, all of them volunteers, all of them ready. Fleet status? She asked. All ships report ready, Admiral, her tactical officer replied. We can jump in 5 minutes. Minseo nodded. She opened a communication channel to all ships. Her voice was calm, steady. This is Admiral Minseo. 200 years ago, when humanity was dying, one person chose kindness over fear. Aethelus of the Varani risked everything to save people he'd never met. His reward was exile and poverty. Our reward was survival. Today, we repay that debt. Today, we show the galaxy what humans do for their friends. All ships, prepare for jump. Destination, Kralith space. The galaxy expected humanity to go to the Varani homeworld, to set up defenses, to prepare for a long siege. That's what any rational species would do. Humanity wasn't interested in being rational. They were interested in sending a message. The fleet jumped, 3,000 ships vanished from human space and reappeared deep inside Kralith territory. Not at the borders, not at a military staging area. At the heart of the Empire itself, the Kralith had been laughing at the human threat. The laughter stopped very quickly. Commander Taehyun's stealth teams were already in position. They'd slipped past Kralith sensors hours ago. Now they waited in the shadows of orbital platforms and communication hubs, waiting for the signal to strike. Intelligence Director Jiwoo watched her screens. Data was flowing in from 100 sources. Kralith fleet positions, supply depot locations, command center vulnerabilities. Her agents had done their job perfectly. The galaxy had dismissed humanity as weak, young, insignificant. They were about to learn a very important lesson. Humans might be young, but they learned fast, and they never, ever forgot a debt. The Kralith home fleet detected the human ships 3 seconds after they arrived. Alarms screamed across every military base. Admirals scrambled to their command centers. This was impossible. The humans were supposed to be defending the Varani worlds. What were they doing here? Admiral Youngmin stood calmly on the bridge of his flagship, the Long Memory. Around him, officers called out reports. Kralith ships were mobilizing. Defense platforms were powering up. The enemy had superior numbers. 3-to-1 odds. Send them a message, Youngmin said. Audio only. A communications officer opened the channel. Youngmin spoke clearly. This is Admiral Youngmin of the Human Defense Fleet. We are here for one reason. End your attacks on the Varani. Withdraw all forces from their territory. You have 1 hour to comply. The response came quickly. A Kralith admiral appeared on screen. His scales were deep red, marking him as high nobility. You dare enter our space with threats? You are outnumbered, outgunned. Surrender now, and we might let you leave alive. Youngmin smiled. You have 59 minutes. The channel closed. The Kralith admiral stared at the blank screen in disbelief. Then he started giving orders. Destroy the human fleet. Show these primitives what real power looked like. The Kralith fleet moved to attack. Massive battleships, heavy cruisers, fighter squadrons that numbered in the thousands. They advanced in the traditional formation, a hammer blow meant to crush the enemy through sheer force. Commander Taehyun watched from the shadows of a Kralith communications satellite. All teams, execute. Across Kralith space, human special forces struck simultaneously. They didn't attack ships or soldiers. They attacked infrastructure. Communication relays went dark. Sensor networks went blind. The Kralith admirals tried to coordinate their fleets and found themselves shouting into dead channels. The hammer blow that should have been perfectly coordinated became a confused mess. Ships moved without knowing where their allies were. Squadrons fired on each other by mistake. The formation fell apart. And then the human fleet attacked. They didn't charge forward. They didn't try to match the Kralith in a straight fight. Instead, they used weapons the Kralith had never seen. Gravitational disruptors that folded space, making Kralith shields useless. Precision strikes that disabled engines and weapons without destroying entire ships. Tactics that turned the Kralith's numbers into a disadvantage as ships collided with each other in the confusion. Lieutenant Yoonji piloted her fighter through the chaos. Her squadron moved like dancers, perfectly synchronized. They didn't waste ammunition. Every shot counted. Every move had a purpose. The Kralith fighters tried to match them but couldn't. Human pilots had been training for this their entire lives. Within an hour, half the Kralith home fleet was disabled. Not destroyed. Disabled. Floating in space. Crews alive. Weapons offline. The message was clear. We can kill you. We're choosing not to. The Kralith admiral sent a surrender request. Youngmin accepted it. Withdraw from Varani space. Now. Klaudaklam. End quote. Ninth. End quote. I don't have the authority, the Kralith admiral admitted. Only the supreme leader can give that order. Then let me speak with your supreme leader, Youngmin said. The communication was routed through several layers of command. Finally, the Supreme Leader appeared on screen. He was old. His scales faded to gray, but his eyes were sharp and cruel. "You've won a battle, human, not the war. We have 200 worlds. Thousands of ships. You've merely annoyed us. We've proven we can defeat your military," Youngman replied calmly. "Now let me prove something else." He gave an order to his weapons officer. The long memory moved into orbit above the Kralith homeworld. Below, cities sprawled across the continents. Billions of lives. The planetary shields were the strongest in the galaxy. Nothing could penetrate them. "Watch carefully," Youngman said. A device launched from the long memory. It didn't explode. It didn't fire. It simply activated. And across the entire planet, every piece of technology stopped working. Computers, power grids, life support, communication. The cities went dark. Billions of Kralith found themselves in complete blackness. Emergency systems failed. Hospitals lost power. Air circulation in the underground cities stopped. For 1 hour, the most advanced world in the Kralith Empire became helpless. Then, exactly 60 minutes later, everything turned back on. Lights flickered to life. Systems rebooted. Life support resumed. The device had been perfectly calibrated. Not a single person died, but everyone on that planet had felt what true vulnerability was. Youngman's voice was soft when he spoke again. "That was a demonstration. Next time, the device stays on. Your entire civilization depends on technology. Imagine if it all stopped, permanently." The Supreme Leader's face had gone pale. "You would commit genocide?" "No," Youngman said. "We would never. But you need to understand something. We could have destroyed your home fleet. We disabled it. We could have destroyed your home world. We scared it. We could have killed billions. We killed no one. We don't want to conquer you. We don't want your territory. We don't even want revenge. We want you to leave the Varani alone." Captain Jihoon's voice came over the public channels. He'd been broadcasting to every Kralith world simultaneously. "People of the Kralith Empire, your government has been telling you that the Varani are criminals, thieves, that they deserve to die. This is a lie. The Varani are peaceful. They never threatened you. Your leaders wanted their territory. Nothing more. And they were willing to commit genocide to take it." Images appeared on screens across Kralith space. Footage of Varani colonies burning. Families fleeing. Children crying. Evidence that the Kralith military had been targeting civilians deliberately. Proof that this wasn't a territorial dispute. It was murder. "We are not here to destroy you," Jihoon continued. "We are here to stop you. Every ship that surrenders will be allowed to leave. Every world that stands down will be left in peace. We are not your enemies. We are the consequences of your actions." The Kralith military began to fracture. Some admirals wanted to keep fighting. Others looked at the disabled home fleet and the terrified homeworld and made the rational choice. They surrendered. Within days, the Kralith forces in Varani space withdrew. The Supreme Leader tried to hold out. Pride wouldn't let him accept defeat from a species he'd called primitive. Admiral Minseo responded by parking 50 human warships in orbit above the Kralith capital. They didn't fire, didn't threaten, just waited. The pressure was too much. The Supreme Leader contacted Youngman. "What are your terms?" "Simple," Youngman replied. "Complete withdrawal from Varani space. Reparations for the damage you've caused. And a formal apology to the Varani people for attempting genocide. Accept these terms, or we take control of your government and impose them ourselves." The Supreme Leader had no choice. He accepted. The Kralith forces pulled back. The Varani refugees began returning home. The war was over, but the galaxy was watching. And Intelligence Director Jiwoo was reviewing disturbing information. Intercepted messages, secret communications, evidence that pointed to something much worse than a simple territorial dispute. The Galactic Council hadn't just ignored the Varani genocide. They'd planned it. A test to see how humanity would respond. An excuse to contain human expansion. The real enemy wasn't the Kralith. It was the Council itself. Jiwoo sent her report to Ambassador He-jin. The message was simple. We need to talk. The emergency council session was packed. Every species had sent representatives. They wanted to see what the humans would do next. Some expected apologies. Others expected threats. None of them expected what actually happened. Ambassador He-jin walked to the center of the chamber. She moved slowly, deliberately. Behind her, analyst Seojun carried a data storage device. It was small, but it contained something explosive. Members of the Galactic Council, He-jin began. We have just finished a military operation to protect the Varani people from genocide. An operation that should not have been necessary. An operation that revealed something disturbing. The chairman's tentacles waved dismissively. You violated council protocols by attacking a member species. We will discuss sanctions after. You planned it, He-jin interrupted. The genocide. You planned all of it. The chamber went silent. Then erupted into noise. Denials. Accusations. Confusion. He-jin waited for the chaos to die down. Then, she nodded to Seojun. Holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber. Communications, records, meeting transcripts, financial transfers. All of it carefully documented. All of it damning. Seojun's voice was steady as he explained. 6 months ago, the Council's Intelligence Committee received reports that the Kralith were planning to expand into Varani territory. The committee did not warn the Varani. Instead, they encouraged the Kralith, promised non-interference, even provided intelligence on Varani defensive capabilities. More documents appeared. The evidence was overwhelming. The Council hadn't just ignored the genocide. They'd helped make it happen. But why? A counselor from a smaller species asked. What was the purpose? Why? What was the purpose? He-jin answered. To test humanity. To see if we would break galactic law. To save an ally. To give you an excuse to contain our expansion. She looked around the chamber. You've been afraid of us since we arrived. Afraid of our technology. Our adaptability. Our growth. You wanted to control us. And you were willing to kill 3 million innocent beings to do it. The chairman tried to maintain control. These allegations are... Reading's time. True, said a voice from the audience. A counselor from the Terran Confederation stood up. I was present at those meetings. I voted against the plan but was overruled. The senior members decided that sacrificing the Varani was acceptable if it prevented human expansion. Other voices joined in. Some confessing. Some claiming they'd objected, but been silenced. The coalition of guilt was fracturing. Captain Doyun, now Commodore Doyun, stepped forward. For 200 years, humanity has tried to be good neighbors. We followed your laws, accepted your restrictions, played by your rules, even when those rules were designed to keep us weak. We did this because we believed in the dream of the Council. A galaxy where all species work together. Where law matters more than military might. He paused. Let his words sink in. You broke that dream. Not us. You. When you decided some species were worth protecting and others were disposable. When you turned justice into a tool for maintaining power. Scientist Ara activated another display. This one showed humanitarian missions. Medical supplies sent to poor worlds. Technology shared freely with developing species. Educational programs. Disaster relief. Dozens of projects spread across the galaxy. While you were planning genocide, Ara said quietly, humanity was helping 47 other species. Species you deemed insignificant. We didn't ask for anything in return. No alliances, no tribute, no loyalty. We helped because it was right. The display zoomed out, showed a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked human colonies and outposts. They were everywhere, in regions the Council had written off as worthless, and they formed a perfect strategic network. Defense Coordinator Juan spoke next. We colonized the places you didn't want. The toxic systems, the dangerous regions, the empty spaces between your territories. You thought we were desperate, taking whatever scraps we could find. He smiled. We were building a network, and now that network surrounds half of Council space. We control strategic choke points on dozens of major trade routes. Not because we wanted power, because we wanted insurance. Another display appeared. Trade flow analysis. If humanity closed its territories, entire sectors would lose access to critical goods. Economies would collapse. Not immediately, but eventually. We don't want to use this leverage, Hagen said. We never did. But you need to understand what you've created. You tried to make us afraid of you. Instead, you should be asking yourselves, what happens if we stop being cooperative? Ambassador Mireille stepped forward. She represented an alliance of 47 smaller species, the ones humanity had been helping. We call for immediate council reform, equal representation for all species, protection guarantees regardless of military power, an end to the doctrine of acceptable losses. The chamber exploded again. The major powers objected loudly. This would destroy their control, their influence, their ability to shape galactic policy to benefit themselves. But the smaller species were listening. They'd watched humanity defeat the Krolith, watched humans risk everything to save an ally that could offer them nothing, and they'd seen the evidence of council corruption. They were tired of being powerless. The vote was called. Reform or maintain the status quo. It wasn't even close. 70% voted for reform. The age of the old council was over, but 3 major powers voted no. The Draxian hegemony, the Corthan Union, the Nexus Collective. Together they controlled a quarter of the galaxy's military forces, and they were furious. The Draxian ambassador stood. This council is illegitimate. We will not recognize any reforms voted through by lesser species. Any attempt to enforce these changes will be considered an act of war. The Corthan ambassador agreed. Humanity has revealed itself as a threat to galactic stability. They hide weapons, manipulate weaker species, ignore established hierarchies. They must be contained, by force if necessary. The Nexus representative was blunt. We are mobilizing our fleets. Any species that stands with humanity will be considered hostile. You have 1 month to reconsider. Hagen listened to the threats calmly. Then she looked at Doyun. He nodded. They'd expected this. You're making a mistake, Hagen said. We didn't want this fight. We wanted peace. But if you insist on war, you should understand what you're choosing. Commodore Doyun's voice was cold. The Krolith had 3-to-1 numerical superiority. We beat them in days, without killing anyone. You have better odds. Maybe 2-to-1 against our known forces. The 3 ambassadors hesitated. They'd seen the reports from the Krolith front. The human victories had been decisive, almost effortless. But surely the humans couldn't sustain that against multiple major powers simultaneously. We'll take our chances, the Draxian ambassador said. The 3 representatives walked out. Their fleets began mobilizing, and the galaxy held its breath. In the human delegation's private chamber, Doyun looked at Hagen. They're really going to do it. Yes, she agreed. They can't accept losing power. Better to fight than fade into irrelevance. Can we win? He asked. Hagen pulled up tactical reports from Admiral Minseo and Commander Taehyun. Fleet positions, resource assessments, strategic analyses. She read through them carefully. Then she smiled. Yes, we can win. The question is, what do we do after we win? That was the real question. Humanity had proven it could fight. Now it needed to prove it could build something better. The war started badly for humanity. Or at least, it looked that way. The three powers struck simultaneously. Draxian fleets hit human trade routes. Korthan battle groups attacked mining colonies. Nexus strike forces launched raids on human outposts. Coordinated. Overwhelming. Brutal. The galaxy watched and waited for humanity to collapse. They had fought one war, and won. But 3 wars at once? Against enemies who had centuries of military experience? Impossible. Except humanity didn't collapse. The attacks destroyed infrastructure but killed surprisingly few people. Because every human colony had something the other species didn't. Redundancy. Every station was self-sufficient. Every settlement had backup systems. Every fleet group could operate independently. There was no central weak point to target. Admiral Minseo had designed it that way. She'd studied every major war in galactic history and learned from every defeat. The pattern was always the same. Empires grew fast, spread thin, created fragile supply chains. Then, when someone cut those chains, the empire starved. Humanity had no chains to cut. Fleet status? Minseo asked from her command center. All groups operating at full capacity, her tactical officer reported. Enemy raids have caused minimal disruption. We're ready to counterattack. Minseo nodded. Execute Plan Aegis. Show them what distributed warfare looks like. The human response wasn't a massive fleet charge. It was 1,000 small strikes, everywhere at once. Raiding parties that hit supply depots and vanished. Stealth teams that disabled communication networks. Precision attacks that crippled enemy infrastructure without destroying it. The 3 powers had numbers. Humanity had mobility. Commander Taehyun's special forces were everywhere and nowhere. They struck at Draxian fuel refineries, leaving the enemy fleet stranded. They hacked Korthan targeting systems, making their weapons fire on empty space. They infiltrated Nexus command centers and created chaos with false orders. The enemy spent more time fighting confusion than fighting humans. But the real masterstroke came from Captain Ji-hoon. He didn't attack military targets. He attacked hearts and minds. His ships went to enemy worlds and broadcast messages. Not propaganda. Just facts. Casualty reports showing that humans were taking prisoners instead of killing them. Evidence of the Council conspiracy. Proof that the 3 powers had started this war to maintain control, not for any legitimate reason. And then he did something no one expected. He started evacuating civilians from war zones. Not human civilians. Enemy civilians. His ships appeared at contested worlds and offered transport to safety. Free of charge, no strings attached. The first few times, people thought it was a trick. A way to take hostages. But the refugees were actually taken to safe locations, given food and shelter, and treated well, better than their own governments had treated them. Word spread quickly. The Draxian government tried to stop their people from accepting human help. But when your city is about to be bombed and someone offers you escape, you take it. Millions of Draxian civilians fled to human protection. And once they were safe, they started asking questions. Why had their government started this war? What were they fighting for? The same thing happened in Korthan space and Nexus territories. The populations began to turn against their own leaders, not because of human propaganda, because of human actions. Lieutenant Yunji, now a wing commander, led the defense of the Varani homeworld when the Draxians launched a spite attack. They wanted to punish humanity's allies, show that being friends with humans was dangerous. They sent their best battle group. 300 ships. They didn't get through. Human defenses were perfect. Layered shields, point defense networks, fighter squadrons that moved like schools of fish. The Draxian attack was crushed without a single shot hitting the planet. Not one Varani died. The human pilots had been that precise. The battle was broadcast across the galaxy. The message was clear. Humanity protects its friends. Absolutely. Admiral Youngman didn't occupy conquered territory. That was the other surprise. His fleets would defeat an enemy force, disable their weapons, and then leave. But before leaving, they'd help establish local governments. Democratic ones. They'd provide reconstruction aid, medical supplies, food, everything a war-torn region needed to rebuild. Within weeks, the occupied populations were rioting. Not against humans, against their own governments, demanding to know why their leaders couldn't provide what the humans had given them freely, why they had to suffer while the ruling classes lived in luxury, why anyone should fight a war to maintain a corrupt system. The three powers began to fracture internally. Generals refused orders, governors declared independence, entire fleets defected. The governments tried to hold things together through force, but that only made things worse. You can't bomb your own people into loyalty. 6 months after the war started, it was effectively over. Not because humanity had conquered the three powers, because the three powers had collapsed from within. The governments that had started the war were gone, replaced by new leaders chosen by their people. Leaders who immediately sued for peace. The peace negotiations were held on neutral ground. Ambassador Heijin represented humanity. The new leaders of the three former powers sat across from her. They expected harsh terms, territory demands, tribute, the victor's privilege. Heijin surprised them. We want 3 things. First, recognition of the Reformed Council. Second, reparations paid to the Varani for the genocide attempt. Third, a commitment to genuine democracy in your territories. That's all. You're not taking our territory? The Draxian representative asked, confused. We never wanted your territory, Heijin replied. We wanted you to stop threatening our friends and respect the rights of smaller species. You've agreed to both. The war is over. The peace treaty was signed quickly. The galaxy was stunned. Humanity had won a 3-front war in 6 months and demanded almost nothing in return. It didn't make sense. Winners were supposed to take spoils. But Dr. Sun-hee understood. She was working with Varani scholars again, helping them rebuild their research institutions. Humans don't measure victory by territory gained, she explained to her colleague. We measure it by problems solved. The problem was an unjust system. Now, the system is changing. That's victory. The new Galactic Assembly held its first meeting a year after the war ended. The old council chamber had been renovated. The throne-like seats for major powers were gone. Now, everyone sat in a circle. Equal. Represented proportionally. The Varani delegate, a young scholar named Kitharus, had a full vote. Same as the Draxians. Same as everyone. Kitharus approached Heijin after the opening ceremony. Ambassador, I wanted to thank you. My great-grandparent was Ithelos, the merchant who helped Earth. Our family has carried shame for generations because of what he did. But now, because of your people, his name means something different. Hope, kindness, connection. Heijin smiled. Your great-grandparents saved 17 million humans. We can never truly repay that. But we'll spend forever trying. You've already done more than enough, Kitharus replied. No, Heijin said gently. We haven't. Because this isn't about balancing accounts. It's about building something better. Your ancestors showed us that kindness matters. That helping others is worth personal sacrifice. We're just trying to honor that lesson. In her office, Intelligence Director Ji Woo was reviewing reports. Humanitarian missions to 47 species had expanded to 93. Human scientists were sharing technology freely. Human engineers were helping build infrastructure on poor worlds. Human teachers were establishing schools in isolated systems. The network of goodwill was growing. Some of her analysts worried. Aren't we making ourselves vulnerable? If we give away our advantages, what stops the next ambitious power from trying to conquer us? Jiwoo thought about that. Then she pulled up casualty reports from the recent war. Human losses had been minimal. Enemy losses, despite 3 major powers attacking simultaneously, had been surprisingly low, because humans had fought to disable, not destroy. To change minds, not take lives. We're not giving away our strength, she said finally. We're multiplying it. Every species we help is a potential ally. Every person we save might save someone else someday. The old powers hoarded their advantages, and it made them brittle. We're sharing ours, and it makes us stronger. Commodore Doyun stood on the observation deck of a human station, watching ships come and go. Human vessels, Varani traders, former enemy merchants now trading peacefully. The galaxy was changing. Slowly, painfully, but changing. A young officer approached him. Sir, I have a question. Why didn't we demand more? We won. We could have taken territory, resources, made ourselves the new dominant power. Doyun thought back to that day in the council chamber, when he'd stood up and made a promise without authorization, when he'd risked everything because it was the right thing to do. Because that's not who we are, he said. Aethelos didn't help Earth because he wanted something from us. He did it because people were dying, and he could help. That's the standard we're trying to live up to. Not conquerors, not rulers, just friends who keep their promises. The officer nodded slowly, understanding. Far away, on Earth, children were still learning about Aethelos in school. About the merchant who saved millions. About the debt that humanity carried. But now the lessons included something new. The story of how humanity repaid that debt. How they'd fought 3 wars simultaneously and won, without becoming the monsters they fought against. The lessons ended the same way they always had. With a simple reminder. Kindness matters. Remember who helped you when you had nothing. And when your friends need you, show up. No matter the cost. The galaxy had trembled in fear when humans went to war. Now it was learning to tremble for a different reason. Not fear. Hope. The hope that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. That power and compassion weren't opposites. That strength could be used to protect instead of dominate. Humanity hadn't just won a war. They'd won something harder. They'd proven that the old way of doing things, the way of might makes right and acceptable losses, didn't have to be the only way. The galaxy was still learning that lesson. But thanks to one merchant's kindness 200 years ago, and humanity's determination to honor that kindness, there was finally a chance for something better. A chance for a galaxy where everyone mattered, where debts of gratitude were repaid, where the strong protected the weak instead of exploiting them. It wasn't perfect. It would take generations. But it was a start. And humans were very good at keeping promises.